Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video we got another news and rumor video here to discuss, looking at some signings from our past couple of days and some trade rumors involving the Blues, Oilers, Penguins, Rangers and Sabres, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Instant Hockey channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video, subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. We're never able to with you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below so you can also listen to this video. Now, just before we begin this video, I want to say thank you to CapFriendly. This isn't sponsored by anything like that, but CapFriendly was the site that I used to get a lot of the contract info that I've been talking about. You know, signings, trades, buyout information, things like that. So they went dark, I think it was yesterday, after the Washington Capitals bought them a couple weeks ago. We've still been able to get some info off of it during free agency, the draft, but after the Washington Capitals bought it, it went dark yesterday. So unfortunately, CapFriendly's now no longer, so it was an interesting tool. It really helped me with a lot of the contract info. So I really did like it and appreciate it, so I want to say thank you to CapFriendly, and hopefully it does well in Washington with the Washington Capitals. And for the time being, just once again, not sponsored or anything, but I'm going to be using Puckpedia now to be getting some of the contract info and things like this. It's probably the closest thing we've got to CapFriendly right now, so if you want to look at some of the contract info and things like that, I definitely suggest you go check out Puckpedia. It's probably the closest thing we have right now to CapFriendly, so go check it out. Once again, like I said, not sponsored or anything, but still, it's an interesting tool and it really does work well. So we're going to start today's video off by looking at some of these signings from our past couple of days. We've had actually a handful of interesting signings, even a couple earlier today, so we'll get to all of those here. So first, on July 9th, we saw a handful of signings, only 3 I think it was. First, the Seattle Kraken signed Igor Sokolov to a 1-year league minimum deal. He was acquired in a trade that the Sens and the Utah franchise made a little while ago, swapping Sokolov for Jenik. It was a pretty good pickup there for the Utah. Sokolov should be a solid either AHL player or solid 12th, 13th forward, so it's a pretty good pickup there for Utah. Signed him to a 1-year league minimum deal. Then the Florida Panthers signed Jesper Boqvist's brother Adam Boqvist, who are now both in Florida, to a 1-year league minimum deal. Adam Boqvist, a really solid third pair right shot defenseman who has some really good offensive upside, so he should be a really good fit there for the Panthers. That's a pretty good pickup there for Florida. And then we saw the Utah franchise send Artem Duda, who was I think originally Arizona Coyotes pick a couple of years back. Gets a 3-year ELC with the AV of $950,000 at the beginning of the start of next year. Pretty good pickup there for the Utah to get Duda on his ELC. Just pretty good pickups there. Then yesterday on July 10th, we saw a handful of signings. Dylan Coughlin got a 1-year league minimum deal. We talked about him being acquired recently from the Carolina Hurricanes at future considerations, so that's a pretty good pickup there, and Coughlin should be a solid 7th-8th defenseman there in Winnipeg right now. The New York Islanders signed a couple of players, including RFA forward Tyce Thompson, 1-year league minimum. Should be an AHL player. Has the opportunity to be a really good call-up option, so pretty good stuff there for NYI. They also acquired Foudy, who was a 1-year league minimum deal. Foudy bounced around last year from Columbus to Nashville. Never really found a huge, fantastic home for himself, so hopefully he can in New York. He's a possibility to be an AHL player. Wouldn't be overly surprised if he found himself in a bottom 6 role, so it's a pretty good pickup there for the Islanders. Yesterday we also saw an interesting signing with one of the bigger pending UFAs, and that was Ryan Suter. We talked about him being bought out a little while ago from the Dallas Stars. Suter winds up finding a home in St. Louis. 1-year deal, $775,000. Interestingly enough, he's now going to be paid by 3 of the 8 Central Division teams. Minnesota is still paying him, Dallas is still paying him, and now St. Louis is paying him, so interesting to note there. But Suter is a really good player. He can play on the third pair, so that's a really good pickup there. He should be a solid third pair defenseman there for the Blues, and we'll get to how this affects the Blues in a second, but that's an interesting pickup there for the Blues. Then we saw the Columbus Blue Jackets sign Jay Christensen to a 1-year league minimum deal. Pretty good pickup there for the Jackets. I mean, Christensen was, I think, one of the guys who filed for arbitration, so that's a pretty good pickup there for the Jackets. They don't have to go through arbitration with him. That's one of the arbitration names off the list, and that's going to be a pretty good pickup there for the Jackets to get Christensen, who should be a solid call-up option defenseman. The Pittsburgh Penguins sent one of their players to an ELC, one of their players from this past draft, and that's Tanner Howe. Howe, who was a 2nd-round pick, 46th overall in the 2024 draft, gets a 3-year ELC with an AV of $875,000. This should be going to start next year. Pretty good pickup there for the Penguins. I think Howe eventually should be a solid middle 6 forward there for the Pittsburgh Penguins long term, so pretty good pickup there. there. The Washington Capitals also signed a second-round pick from the 2024 draft, and that was Ryan Muggli. Muggli, who was set 52nd overall in the 2024 draft, gets a 3-year ELC with an AAV of $940,000 at the beginning of the start of next year. Pretty good pickup there for the Caps. Long-term, once again, should be a solid player there for the Caps, so pretty good pickup there. And then we saw the Seattle Sharks signed 11th overall pick Sam Dickinson. Dickinson, who's a really good top 4 left shot defenseman, the top prospect now on the defensive end in San Jose, gets a 3-year ELC with AAV of $975,000. Don't expect him to make the team this upcoming season, but I think next year he'll have a really good shot at it, so pretty good pickup there for the Sharks. And then earlier today we saw a handful of signings happen at the recording of this video. First, Samuel Walker, who was an RFA in Minnesota, gets a 1-year deal with AAV of $375,000. Pretty good pickup there for the Wild. Walker needed a new contract. He's a really good call-up option, so pretty good pickup there for Minnesota. The San Jose Sharks signed Ty Emberson. He's coming off a pretty good season after being claimed off of waivers last year. He was another guy who filed for arbitration. He gets a 1-year deal with AAV of $950,000, so that's pretty good. Now it's another arbitration case off the board, so Emberson should be a solid 6th, 7th D for the San Jose Sharks. Then we saw another top-end player in the 2024 draft get his ELC, and that's Iginla. Iginla, who was taken by the Utah franchise, gets a 3-year ELC with AAV of $975,000. Don't expect him to make the roster this year, but I think there's a very likely chance that next year he does make the roster, so pretty good pickup there for Utah. And then another guy who filed for arbitration, and Janice Jerome Moser with Tampa, has also come to terms on a new deal. Moser gets a 2-year deal with AAV of $3.375 million. Pretty good deal, in my opinion, for the Bolts to get a solid young player here in Moser for under $4 million. So that's pretty good, and that's another name off the arbitration board. So with those 3 guys now signed, there are only 11 players left on the arbitration board. I don't even think we've had the updates for the dates for the arbitration, but Beck Mallinson and Lukonen and Buffalo both still have arbitration dates. So do Drury and Natchez in Carolina. So do Greaves and Marchenko in Columbus. Christensen's now signed. Valeno in Detroit still has one. Stastny in Nashville still has one. Wallstrom in New York I still has one. Lindgren in New York R still has one. Emberson, like we said, signed. Moser, like we said, signed. And then Dewar in Toronto still has one. So there's still a handful of guys who still have arbitration. We should get the dates in the next couple of days. I'm interested to see guys like Moser, Emberson, and Christensen all sign their deals before they hit arbitration. So interesting to note there. Interesting to see guys like Iginla, Howe, and Dickinson get their ELCs. And also interesting to see guys like Walker, Foudy, and Suter get new deals. So interesting signings from our past couple of days. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. We'll start with the St. Louis Blues because it has something to do with directly connected to one of the things that happened yesterday. They signed Ryan Suter, which was a pretty good deal. I mean, Suter at league minimum on a 3rd pair should be a really good pickup there for the St. Louis Blues, but this gives them a lot of left shot defensemen. I mean, Falk is a guy who plays more on the right side, as is Parayko, but you have Krug who plays on the left side, Leddy who plays on the left side, Perunovich is more of a lefty, and then they've brought in now Ryan Suter, who's a lefty, and Pierre-Olivier Joseph, also in free agency, who was a lefty. So they have 5 left shot defensemen, which is a real big logjam in that left shot defensive side. So it does make me wonder, is there a possibility we see the Blues move a defenseman? Now, we've seen some people mention Tyler Tucker, who is mostly left shot defenseman too, but can also play on the right side, so I think he's a little bit less likely. They also just signed Perunovich, just signed Joseph, and just signed Suter, so I don't think any 3 of those guys could be traded, but is there still a possibility to see a guy like maybe Torrey Krug get moved before the season starts? I think it's possible we could see a lower end guy. Like, I think it's possible Perunovich could get moved. I think it also is a possibility Tucker could get moved, but I think it's very likely that a guy who is maybe in the top 4 making a lot of money could potentially be moved, like a Krug or a Leddy. I think it's a possibility. I think Leddy, with only having 2 more seasons left of $4 million, is a little bit more palatable for that team. But we know that they were trying to move Krug last offseason. It never worked out. He's got this year plus 2 more seasons at $6.5 million. It's not an overly egregiously bad contract, and if he can go somewhere where he can be captain in the first power play unit and be sort of the similar role he had in Boston, I think it could work out. It just hasn't really worked out overly well in St. Louis. I do think it could still work somewhere else. So for teams who need some more defensive help still and have some cap room, I think there's a possibility the Blues could try and move Krug somewhere. Now, I think he has a no trade clause, so he'd have to approve a deal. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there. But I think with the addition of Ryan Suter, the Blues are going to have to make some sort of a move on the blue line. I do think it's a quite likely possibility we see someone get moved, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But it does sound like the Blues will have to move someone in the not too distant future. Next, going over to the Toronto Maple Leafs and Dallas Stars, there's been some recent rumblings I've seen. I can't confirm this for sure, but I've seen a couple of reports on Twitter saying that the Stars may be making a play for Nick Robertson soon. Now, we know that Nick Robertson's brother Jason Robertson is in Dallas, so that might make sense as to why they would go after him. We also know that they lost a little bit of bottom six help with guys like Dellandrea and Craig Smith and Rag Foxon moving on, so they could definitely use a guy on a cheaper contract like Robertson is, who can definitely help them in their bottom six. We know Nick Robertson's also requested a trade, so it'll be interesting to see if they can work out a deal to try and acquire Nick Robertson. Now, what the Leafs would want, I mean, Robertson was a former second-round pick, so I guess it would be something like a third-round pick and a really good prospect, or maybe some sort of a player back in return. Not exactly sure who they could try and target from Dallas. Dallas does have a really good prospect pool, so we'd have to wait and see, but it does sound like Dallas may eventually, maybe right now, or in the not-too-distant future, make a play for Nick Robertson and try and acquire him to reunite him with his brother Jason in Dallas. So that would be interesting. Like I said, it would be interesting to see Jason Robertson and Nick Robertson play on the same team. Also, the Stars could definitely use another bottom six forward, so interesting stuff there, but it does sound like Nick Robertson could be had for the right price, and Dallas is a team who might be a team who has interest in him, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Going over to the Edmonton Oilers, in one of his recent shows, Frank Seravalli was talking about the Edmonton Oilers and said that there's a very likely chance that if a team really wanted to, Philip Broberg may be a prime target to be offer sheeted. Now, Broberg at this point has shown him to be a really good defenseman. He was really good in the playoffs down the stretch for the Oilers. Show that he should have probably had a little bit more of a role this season. Seems to be sort of getting squeezed right now after his performance in the playoffs. My guess would be he's at this point in his career probably a $1.5 million player, and the Oilers, I guess, don't feel that way. Also don't have too much cap space to work with at that point. So given that fact, they haven't signed him yet, but he is offer sheet eligible, and given that fact, there's a couple of teams who may be able to take a stab at him. Like Frank Seravalli put out numbers saying that if a team were to try and offer sheet him for like 6 years at $4.5 million, there wouldn't really be much the Oilers could do about that. And if Broberg continues his growth from last year to improve even more, could be a couple of teams who think that that could be a sort of a value steal for Broberg. So it'll be interesting to see. There are teams out there who could have some cap space. If he was to get around $4.5 million, that would only cost a team a second-round pick to move him. So if there's a low-end team like, say, a Chicago or an Anaheim or San Jose who's looking for some defensive help, has their second-round pick for next year, and wants to try and offer sheet Broberg, it might be a possibility and something some teams should think about, because Broberg, if he can continue to develop, might eventually be a solid offensive defenseman in a top 4 role. He has a pretty good shot, and I think it could grow into that sort of a role. Now, in Edmonton, will he ever be that? It's hard to say. I mean, they have Bouchard, Ekholm, and Nurse ahead of him, but I think there's a very likely chance that they really want to try and get Broberg under something like $1.5 million, and if a team were to come out and offer sheet him for $4.5 million, Edmonton will be hard-pressed to make that sort of thing work. So it'll be interesting to see, but Frank Seravalli does think that there's a very likely chance Broberg could be an offer sheet candidate, and if a team were to go and offer him 6 years at $4.5 million, there could be a chance out there that the Oilers don't match that, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Going over to the Pittsburgh Penguins, according to some recent reports from over the past couple of days, it sounds like the Penguins and Crosby are closing in on an extension. There were some reports earlier before that there was sort of rocky conversations that Crosby may be heading to free agency for next year, and that they may not be able to work out an extension, but the recent reports are coming out saying that there's some good negotiations going on right now, and that Crosby will most likely sign an extension in Pittsburgh. It sounds like it'll be somewhere around like a 3-year deal with AV of $10 million, so he'll definitely be the highest paid player on the Penguins organization, at least by the players who they've signed. I mean, if you include Carlson, he's tied for the highest if he was to have a $10 million cap hit, but still, I think that'll be well deserved. Crosby's a really good player. He deserves that sort of money. I think he would really like to stay and remain in Pittsburgh, even if they're sort of going through a retool phase. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there and what exactly the contract looks like, but it sounds like there's progress to be made for Crosby to sign an extension in Pittsburgh, and hopefully he does stay, but it sounds like it'll be some sort of a 3-year deal with AV of $10 million, so interesting stuff there. And lastly, going over to New York Rangers, we have a couple of things for them. Once again, talking about Kakko and Trouba. So first, when it comes to Kakko, there's a couple of recent reports I've seen out there saying that the Rangers are not overly happy with the returns that they've been given on Kakko. According to Vince Mercogliano, he says that the Rangers are still shopping Kakko and still trying to find a new home for him, but have received underwhelming trade values, which is why Kakko's still on the roster and hasn't been dealt yet. So it'll be interesting to see if he does wind up getting dealt. I think the Rangers still really want to try and add a top 6 forward, and if they can move Kakko, maybe a couple of picks or something like that to get that, I think they'd be open to doing so. Kakko's had lots of opportunities to work in the top 6, maybe not as much as Lafreniere, but still, he's had a couple of opportunities to work in the top 6. Hasn't really done so, coming off an extremely bad down year this year. Has some really good defensive abilities, but hasn't been able to take a step offensively. And given the fact he was the 2nd overall pick, he hasn't really lived up to expectations. So the Rangers are trying to move him. They want to try and get an upgrade in their forward group. So far, they've been met with underwhelming return offers for him, and I think there's a very likely chance that if they can get some more increased value and there's a little bit of a better trade offer, they may still try and move him. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But it does seem like they're still shopping Kakko. And then when it comes to Trouba, there has been some confirmed reports, I think, recently saying that Trouba did nix a trade to Detroit, and that the situation with Trouba is sort of in the air right now. There's some who think there's a possibility that Ryan Lindgren, once his arbitration case is finished, he could be bought out. It's a possibility, but I don't think it's the greatest possibility. And there's also been some talk recently I've seen from Twitter, once again, can't confirm that this is official or anything like that, but there has been some talk about the Rangers and the Sabres talking about a Trouba trade. I'm not sure if Trouba would waive to go to the Sabres. I think he has a modified no trade clause. So it will be interesting to know. I think it could be a really good fit there in Buffalo. I mean, they have a lot of really good top 4 left shot defensemen, but they don't have a really solid right shot defenseman besides Yoki Haru, and he's more of a 3rd pair guy. So I think they could definitely work well with a guy like Trouba. Now, I'm not sure what they would have to give up for Trouba, or if Trouba will be willing to go to Buffalo. So it'd be an interesting situation to watch out for, but it's something we're going to have to keep our eye on. And there's even been some talk saying that maybe the Sabres could try and target a guy like Kakko too, because they still do need that solid top 9 forward upgrade. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there with the Rangers and the Sabres, but I have heard some rumblings, at least speculation, saying that the Rangers and the Sabres could be talking about a trade involving Trouba and potentially Kakko, and it will be interesting to see what sort of a trade could happen there. But it will be interesting to see, not sure if that's official or not yet, but it does sound they could be talking a trade, and Buffalo could be looking to try and acquire Jacob Trouba. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's all I'm talking about for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. What do you think about all that we discussed here today? Could the Sabres and Rangers look upon a Trouba and deal potentially with Kakko? And if so, what sort of return could the Rangers get for that? And what do you think happens with Trouba and Kakko? Do you think the Penguins sign Crosby, and if so, what sort of a deal does he get? Does Broberg get offer sheet, and if so, what's the contract? And what sort of team do you think could try and offer sheet him? Do you think the Leafs will wind up moving Robertson to Dallas, and if so, what sort of return could they get? And what do you think about the St. Louis Blues? Do they move a defenseman, and if so, which defenseman do they move? And which teams do you think could have some interest in it? Definitely, after you guys' thoughts on all of that, plus the signings from over the past couple of days, down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video. If you like it, remember to subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're never with you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below, so you can also listen to today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so if you check that out, leave a link down in the description below, and can't you see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.